My name is Robert Paterson, and I'm the composer of Dark Mountains, the piece that the Vermont Symphony commissioned for their 2011 Made in Vermont tour. So I just want to say a few words about what inspired me to write the piece and where the title came from and so on. Way back in the 90s, I used to live in Vermont for a little while, and I remember, when I lived in Vermont, I used to gig everywhere. I used to play in the Vermont Symphony a little bit as a percussionist, and I used to play other gigs all over the state. And what I remember the most is that, the mountains are so beautiful, and it's just gorgeous. I mean, there's not a day of the year almost when it's not pretty somehow with, the fall foliage, or when it's green, or the snow. But sometimes when you're driving through during the night or in the late evening, the mountains have this really cool quality. It's almost like an Ansel Adams painting or a photograph. It's like very dark and ominous, like gray almost. And I see that all the time because actually, frequently as a musician, especially, you're always driving in the evening, and most Vermonters know this too. But the mountains aren't always green, and even in the winter they kind of have a little bit of a brownish gray quality. And also there's something mysterious about that, and almost foreboding sometimes. So that's what inspired the title, and also what inspired what inspired the middle of the piece. So I'll describe how the piece is put together and what I was thinking. The piece is in three connected parts or movements. The first part is kind of a very calm and austere, and has a lot of it's very lush and has some really, I think, long and hopefully beautiful melodies. And so the melodies are traded around the winds a little bit and the strings, and so this goes on for the first third of the piece. The second third was a lot of fun to write as well, and for one reason, I know a few of the players in the orchestra, and particularly in this case, Luke, who's the principal bass player, and Jeremy Levine, who's the timpanist. They both said to me, "Hey Rob, it would be so great if you could write us something really cool, because especially Jeremy didn't have a lot to do on the tour. Some of the older timpani parts and Haydn and things like that weren't as involved." So I said, sure, yeah, I'd do the best I could. So I wrote them both this really, really kind of, vibrant part in the second movement. And right when the timpani and the bass is coming, it goes bam, ba-da-dun, 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 like that. That's where the second movement starts, and that's where, I was thinking about Jeremy and Luke at that point and the rest of the bass section. So that whole section is all about kind of a twisty-turny drive through the mountains at night, and so there's a lot of time signatures that are in odd meters, and what that means is that Jamie Laredo is, when he conducts, he's not going to be conducting in the normal pattern of 4/4 like that. He might be going 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 like that, and those are called odd meters, and so it's a little tricky to conduct and even a little tricky to play. But I mean, he's so good and they're so good, the players, that they won't have a problem with it, and this gives the piece kind of a really interesting, you never know what's coming next kind of a sound. So the third part starts out, kind of calm. It goes back to calmness again. So the whole piece is kind of like what we call an A-B-A form, or A-B-A prime. That's what they say in music theory. So what that means is that the first part's a little bit similar to the third part, the last part, in that the last part is also very calm. And what I did with this last section is I tried to incorporate sounds of what I thought moonlight would sound like shining through the trees, and also maybe some bird sounds. Because when I think of Vermont, in the first section it's kind of like sitting on a back porch, just taking in the beauty and the lushness of the forest and the trees. And the last section's also like this, but maybe opening your ears and hearing some sounds, that you would hear in nature. So the first and third parts are connected that way. So, if you can hear that, that's great, but I never expect people to hear a program with my music. Even if you just hear a little bit of what I'm talking about, that's great, but otherwise, you should just sit back and enjoy the music, hopefully, and that's really about it. But I should say also that the reason I even chose a theme like this is that many of the other composers also were asked to, or just did it on their own, chose themes about Vermont or Green Mountains or things like that, because it is called the Made in Vermont Tour, so it makes a lot of sense. So, that's how hopefully this fits with the rest of those pieces in this kind of long history of pieces that the orchestra, the Vermont Symphony Orchestra, can call their own. Pieces by composers that are either living in Vermont or someone like me who's there quite a bit. And I also want to add that I'm also there quite a bit because I'm the resident composer with the Vermont Youth Orchestra Association for 3 years through Meet the Composer and League of American Orchestras. So because of that, I'm here in Vermont all the time. and I get to work with the youth orchestra. Now I'm so delighted to work with the adult orchestra, and also incredibly honored to be working with Jamie Laredo. It's going to be, I haven't worked with him yet, and I can't wait, but working with all the players and him is going to be such a tremendous experience, and the orchestra is just fantastic. So I just hope if you go to the concert, introduce yourself to me, and I hope you enjoy the piece. Thank you.